Welcome to another edition of Bunker Office Hours, a weekly live podcast brought to you by a team at Bunker Labs, a national network of veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs dedicated to helping our community start and grow their own businesses. I'm your host, the one and only Iron Mike Steadman, coming to you live from Newark, New Jersey, joined by my co-host, Amy Morrison, and our special guest today, Mr. Don Gleason. Don, did I get your last name right?
You nailed it.
You never know. In the military, we start butchering names.
Yep.
You start doing that platoon roll call, and they're like, "Sir, that's not how my name is pronounced,"
Yeah.
but it's all right.
I always say it's just like Jackie, and somebody told me yesterday, says, nobody remembers who Jackie Gleason is anymore. Stop using that.
Yeah. Now
I just
I know it's been a few weeks since we've been back live, given the holidays. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving out there. We're able to, just take a break and fellowship, get out the hustle and bustle. Me and Don were just chopping up about. I asked him on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it being an entrepreneur? And he said 11. I was expecting him to say 15, but you know, when you're in it, you're in it, and it feels like you're in it 24/7. So the opportunity to break away, have dinner with the family, practice gratitude, acknowledging what you're thankful for is super important. And so I hope you all got rest and refurbished and are ready to close out the year on a high note. So before we chop it up with Don, Amy, what announcements do we have for the bunker community?
think we have a lot going on to wrap up the end of the year. So the Bunker Labs Holiday Gift Guide reminder that has been released. It features 60 plus products from our veteran and military spouse-owned businesses in our community. And then a lot of them are offering a 20% off Bunker Labs discount. So check that out, bunkerlabs.org/marketplace
To wrap up the end of
2022. And then Veterans and Residents Showcase event is happening all across the country on December 7th. That's in 34 cities. We're going to have 500 plus veteran and military spouse entrepreneurs, those who are exiting the last cohort and entering the new cohort. So that's a big celebration of those who have finished the program and those who are starting the program fresh, so that you can find out what cities are available near you at bunkerlabs.org/veteran-showcase. We also have 2 virtual events for the showcase, East Coast, West Coast, and everything in between, but you got to pick your side of the country. And then also we have our end of year giving campaign is happening, and today is Giving Tuesday, FYI. So you can help us contribute or continue to provide programming, mostly free of charge, to our community and get the content that you love, like office hours, by donating, and your gift is tax deductible. So you can learn more about that at bunkerlabs.org/end-of-year-giving. That's a great URL. And then also, one more thing for end of year. United Miles for a Mission campaign kicks off today. And so if you are a United Miles member, you can donate your miles to Bunker Labs, and that helps us send our ambassadors to their annual summit in June. And then so it's today only. So today only, it's not today only. I think you can donate your miles for like a couple of months, I think it's like 80 days or something. But anyway, today only, United will match all miles donated 1 for 1. So if you donate today, then United will match those miles. And that link is in the chat. It's like donate.mileageplus.com/ it's a whole thing. So check out the chat and for that one. And also I think it's on our blog as well. So if you check out our blog on our website, you should find more info there. And that is all I got, which is a lot.
This is why I have a co-host, okay? Because there's a lot of information that just got passed. I'm surprised you weren't doing it on like a PowerPoint.
Yeah, you should. Maybe in the future we'll have
maybe in the future. But keeping up with everything, there's a lot going on, right?
Yeah,
but I want to highlight 2 things. And tell me if I'm wrong, Amy. Number 1, that holiday gift guide. That is an easy, low-hanging fruit to support the community. We got a lot of early stage founders that are out there featured in that holiday gift guide. You have no idea the impact you make when you purchase their products and products through the gift guide and share it with your network. That really goes a long way. And all you got to do is go check it out and make a purchase. And then the other thing is these showcases that are going around. A lot of you that may or may not be plugged into the bunker yet, get out, go out and get seen, support. It's all about the community. Because if there's anything this pandemic, the pandemic taught us, and then the other stuff we're feeling now on the other side of the pandemic is like people need community, and you got one, but you got to get out there and engage. And so, holiday gift guide, get out there and support these events taking place all across the country.
And with the holiday gift guide, not only are you supporting other members of the community, but you get gifts. So,
That's it. Boom. Thank you, Amy. We
Yep.
appreciate you.
Okay,
Without
have fun.
further ado, Mr. Don Gleason, talk to us about what's going on with your organization.
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, appreciate the opportunity to be here today and be on Bunker Labs. I'm in the Veterans in Residence program cohort this fall. We're trying to get San Antonio started, and we've got about 5 people in the cohort. So maybe a couple of them are watching this morning. I know Jasmine put out the note. And we're doing our showcase next week. So we're trying to recruit and really get this started. So part of the reason I wanted to be here this morning is to be able to talk about some of the things that I'm working on to help entrepreneurs, but also just military spouses and veterans in general, to help in the transition. Because I think here's one thing that somebody taught me lately that I'm really thinking into and working on is, when we got into the military, we got programmed. They broke us down in basic or officer training school or academy, ROTC, wherever it was. They broke us down and rebuilt us, programmed us for what they needed. But when we transition out of the service, it's a terrible job deprogramming and reprogramming us for work within either the government or especially in corporate. And we've got to think about the mindset people come in with as they start to transition. Because some people, and I'm a DISC consultant, DISC personality assessment, and some people who are high Ds, they just get in and just start knocking out, tasks. It's all about task, task, task. But there's a whole bunch, 67% who are S's. I'm one. And there's 17% are C's, very analytical and compliance oriented. So you're looking for a process, just like we had in the military. And a lot of times that doesn't exist, or it's not exactly for you. So I think what we found, and this is where my nonprofit military transition roundtable came from, is people were going through TAP, and I kept hearing that TAP isn't satisfying the need. And now I remember back to '09, and I thought, yeah, it gave me what I needed, and I had to think into it and apply it. So I don't know if people are looking for a cookbook, a checklist, but it doesn't exist because each one of us is going for something different. So as we think about how to reprogram, what we found was for Military Transition Roundtable is people need to be with people. If you go to TAP class and you get this much material and you go home and you try to decipher it, figure out what belongs to you, it's incredibly hard. Just like what you said, entrepreneurship, right? Entrepreneurship's a 15, transition can be a 15. And we found that with Military Transition Roundtable, if we can bring teams of people together, and we have 6. In fact, one is going on right now, and we had one at 7 this morning. We got another one just after this with entrepreneurs. And we walk together through the process using everybody's knowledge and experience. It's just truly a mastermind. If you go back to the book Think and Grow Rich, the mastermind was one of the 13 success principles of highly successful people. And it's nothing more than like-minded people coming together for a common purpose. So that's really what we're driving to. So we do group coaching and we do individual coaching. And I've got three steps kind of that I want to talk about, but I'm going to hold that in case you have a question.
No, please go ahead. Let's talk about the 3 steps.
Yeah, so I think what I've whittled it down to is 3 different things in transition. People don't know what they want to do next. They haven't had to think about it, right? The military always put them in the job, gave them what they needed, trained them for the job. So you really never had to think about, what was I going to do? And then when your career field was overmanned, what they do? They said, hey, we can give you A, B, or C. Not based upon my needs, based upon the needs of the military, right? So we went in and we just retrained and we did the job. So now it's an opportunity for us to really think about what's our knowledge, our skills, our interests, our passions. And people really struggle with that. So I've really spent a lot of time helping people with that piece. The second one is the networking with a purpose. There's a lot that goes into that, but once you figure out what you want to do first, you got to go out and start and talk to people and find out, what is that job like in the civilian workforce? What's the hours? What's the requirements? What's the typical day like? What's the travel like? What's all these different questions? And if you can really help to understand that situation with an informational interview, or I call it informational conversation, because that's what it really is you get that better perspective on, is this the right task or not? And then the third one is selling your value. I see too many people starting with number three, and they pick up and start to write their resume. And when you don't know the first one, all you can do is try to market yourself to everybody for everything. And we all know in business, for being an entrepreneur, right, is if you market to everybody, you're marketing to nobody because it's not resonating. So most people's resumes doesn't resonate because they're trying to qualify for every job, and they won't go through and really pick out the right bullets that resonate for this particular job, that shows my qualifications for that job. And then you change it for the next application. And too many people like to do the spray and pray method, and it's really too bad because it's wasted effort. So I'm really coming down to those three and how we can help people really walk through those three simple processes.
What has been the most challenging part of getting the organization off the ground?
I'm going to be honest. The challenging for us is we came up and said in the very beginning, and this goes back to Think and Grow Rich. When you do a mastermind with people who are transitioning in business, working business, not transition, but working business, it's mandatory. You make a commitment to be in that room at that time every week, unless you're literally in a hospital bed. You work your rest of your schedule around it. And the hardest part probably is there's so many different opportunities for military to attend. They want to do everything, and therefore at some point they have to make decisions. And sometimes we get somebody in for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and they drop out because they just couldn't make the commitment. They like to pop in, excuse me, they like to pop into events and pop out of events and not have to be mandatory and be almost like held accountable, taking attendance. But that's truly the value of a mastermind, is you develop relationships with the people in your room, 8 to 10 people. They get to know you, you get to know them, you know how they react. If I'm gonna give them some advice this way, I need to know how to give that advice. We do the DISC, again, personality assessment. So we know, are these S-type people, C-type people, I-type people? How do we relate with them? How do we give advice? Because you can't just give them something in your voice. You have to give them something in their voice. We call that the platinum rule in the Maxwell leadership team. So I'm a executive director with the Maxwell leadership team, and that's given me a lot of tools and resources. So I think that's the hardest thing, is getting people to commit and stay engaged and be ready, because we hold people accountable every week. First thing we do, tell me what you said you were going to do 2 weeks ago, and how did you do? And if you didn't do it, tell me what happened. And at the end of every meeting is, what are you going to do the next 2 weeks? And somebody said this morning, they said, I'm going to network a lot. I said, what does that mean? How many events? How many people? And trying to get them down to specifics so that they have something to measure themselves by. So I think that's the hardest thing I'm seeing.
Yeah, I tell you, as someone that is invested in business coaching with 2 different groups, right? I lean in, right? But you got to make that commitment. One, I have something on a Monday. It's like an hour and a half. We have our call, and then the other stuff as well. And you're right, though. There is this sense, I think, of there's so much opportunity out there, and people are quick to say, yes, I'm going to check it out. But then people get oversubscribed and overcommitted. And not only are they competing with other groups, they're competing with apps. They have family obligations and all this other stuff. So, I can see that being a challenge. Another thing I'm curious about, just as a branding guy, okay?
Yeah.
How do you differentiate yourself from some of the other organizations out there that are also focused on the military transition space? Because it seems like we're stacking them on top of each other, but at the same time, nobody's gotten it right. Because I know for a lot of veterans that they're still struggling through the transition process, whether they're officers or enlisted. And so there's definitely a need out there. But in terms of potential funders, right, what makes them say, hey, I'm going to donate to your organization as opposed to some of these other ones over there?
That's a great question. And my first response is, there is no one solution that will satisfy everybody. If we think that that's going to happen, it's probably not, because everybody has different personalities, going for different jobs, different situations. We talk to some people, excuse me, and we talk about, let me take a drink here. I always joke that at 63, my voice is finally changing.
Hmm.
Uh, so um, we've had people who look at us and say, "I don't need accountability. I'm really good at that." Okay, that's great. We're not trying to be for everybody. We're trying to be for that group that needs accountability and needs a group to be able to bounce ideas off of. Some people are really good. I had one guy who just had a fantastic plan and he was marching step by step through it and he had all the connections and it was obvious he didn't need what we provide. So our banner is building account teams of accountability, building teams with accountability. Let me say it that way, because it's teams of people, 8 to 10, with accountability to walk through the process. Because frankly, for a lot of folks, I'm still working the full time job. I'm still trying to work the family. Kids are, teenagers with events, trying to get them to different places, etc. And trying to do transition is three tough jobs. And if you don't have a plan and you aren't focused, you will wander. And I think that whether you're going to be an entrepreneur or not an entrepreneur is important to have that plan.
I have a conversation with a lot of transitioning veterans that are thinking about entrepreneurship, and I tell
Mhm,
them exactly what you just said. Listen, you got family, you're going through a lot, right?
mhm,
Entrepreneurship in its own bucket is hard enough
mhm,
outside of going through this identity crisis when people all of a sudden transition out of the military, right? They've got their new family obligations. Life is just shifting, and I tell
mhm,
people, and I don't know this is statistically proven, this isn't peer reviewed or anything, but I say it takes like 3 years of transition.
mhm.
Like 3 years
That's right.
before you get like settled down. You're like, okay, I got a little vision, I got a focus of the future, right? And trying to do all that on top of entrepreneurship is super hard. But I still think it's great for people to dabble in and learn, listen to our podcast, listen to stuff so that they can prepare themselves and explore, because side hustles are a great way to even just get introduced to entrepreneurship.
That's right. Yeah, I like to say that I spent 24 years in my transition because I got in 1982, the recession of 1982, Ronald Reagan's second year, unemployment was 12, 15% versus 3% today. For college students, it was 20, 25% versus 8 to 10% today. So it was a really tough situation. And I got in the Air Force and I said, 4 years and I'm getting out. And I just had so much fun. I got to do things that my peers weren't even dreaming of. And I was running projects. I was designing buildings. I was developing spill prevention, control, and countermeasures plans for the base. I was finding contaminated groundwater. I mean, nobody that I knew was doing that kind of stuff. So I got great experience, and I just stayed and I stayed. And then at the 24-year point, as I made colonel, I got to go to Baghdad and lead the reconstruction of a country. Now I was doing the programs. I was programming the projects, working with the ministries. I had a team of 400, and but every step of the way, I was thinking about what do I want to do? What resonates with me? What doesn't? What skills do I have? What things do I want to do? And frankly, it was not design. It was not construction. It wasn't facility maintenance. It was environmental and emergency management. And Booz Allen allowed me that opportunity. So it took me a while to figure that stuff out. Um, so
What
it
what
takes you a
gave
while.
you what gave you the nudge to say, okay, I'm going to leave that corporate and launch these two ventures, right? The coaching, leadership, and then also the nonprofit.
Yeah, as we were talking a little bit before, I'll reference that we were talking a little bit before we started. I remember getting on airplanes when traveling when I was in the military, and I start reading the Success magazine and some of the magazines for the different airlines, and I'd see entrepreneurs, and it's like, I would love to do that. It just resonated with me. And my older brother is an entrepreneur. He's over in Houston area and does engineering consulting, particularly, and he's got his master's in space architecture, so working with NASA. And I got to see what he was doing, and it always intrigued me. And probably the freedom that most people talk about, though, when it's a 15 on a scale of 1 to 10, sometimes your freedom for the first couple of years is like zero. So it takes a lot of hours. We had one of our veterans in residence mentors said, you pretty much work 8
I
28
feel
hours a day, 8 days a week
yeah.
to launch an entrepreneur piece. It's not that easy.
And when you're not working, you're always thinking about it too. Or you
That's
feel
right.
guilty. You're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
all this free time, I should be doing something." But,
Yeah.
comes
Yeah.
with practice. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's right. So for me, it was in that back of my head. It was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And to be honest with you, Thanksgiving of 2014, I clicked on a Facebook button for the John Maxwell team, and the guy called me on Saturday, and I was out walking, and I said, "I got an hour. Let's talk." And he convinced me that that was the right thing I wanted to do. I love speaking. I love training. I love coaching. I didn't know it. I didn't know I loved coaching. I just knew that I was good at supervising. So I started that business, but God led me back to working with military and helping them in transition. One of my mentors said, "Don, what breaks your heart?" And I said, "You know what breaks my heart is seeing military transitioning out of the service, struggling, frustrated, depressed, even suicidal. Do you know that we're still losing 22 a day, military and veterans to suicide? Do you know that transition is the number one ideation for
Mm,
suicide for military? And
yeah.
military are 4 times as likely to commit suicide, especially in transition, than their civilian counterparts. So that pulled me in and said, I've got to do something. I can't have supervised all these people and led them and helped them, become better than themselves and not care about them when they're getting out of the service. So that's become my passion.
That's great. And for all our viewers that are tuning in, if you have any questions for Don, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We're going to go ahead and transition to one of our favorite part of office hours, book recommendations. Now, Don, as an entrepreneur, been in the hustle, been in the trenches, what recommendation do you have for our listeners today?
Yeah, one thing we decided early on in MTR, Military Transition Roundtable, was we needed a cohort for entrepreneurs. And we've been running one now for 15 months. MTR is only 32 months old. So it's been about half of our time we've got an entrepreneur cohort. And we got a number of folks in there doing all kinds of different things. So how would we give them some structure to help them through the process? And I happened to get my knee replaced just about June of 2021, just about the time we were starting it. And I went on and I Google search what business books would be really good for entrepreneurs. And this one kept coming up over and over again. The E-Myth Revisited by Michael E. Gerber. It says why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it. And he had about 20 years of experience working with small businesses. And he talks in the very beginning about the technician, the manager, and the entrepreneur. And that really resonated with me because so many people come into a business to be the technician, but they don't know how to manage the business. They don't know how to set processes in place. They don't know how to have consistency. And John Maxwell has taught me, the secret to success is in your schedule. It's in your systems that you operate. And he really talks about systems in here. In the back, I thought it was kind of a cookbook in terms of step by step, figure out what you really want to do. How does your business fit that? How to set up the business structure, right? Who's president, vice president, marketing, finance, all those different positions. And even if you only got 2 or 3 people, what particular jobs are you doing so that you're not stepping on each other and trying to create chaos? And then he goes into the need for processes and how to write processes and systems. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. So I thought this was a really good book. And we walked through it once with our cohort during this last spring. And the members got a lot of real good value on it. And they're setting up those processes. In fact, my partner and I, we just jumped into it in 2020. COVID started. We had an idea. We got the business started like so many of us do. And we've been going back using this book to put those things in process in place so that we're not treating our business like a hobby. We're treating it like a business. Since we're talking to entrepreneurs through Bunker Labs, I would really recommend this book.
It's funny you mentioned that. I tell you, when I was at the Naval Academy, one of the majors that was offered was systems engineering. I was a history
Mhm.
major, really didn't have any idea what systems engineering is. But being an entrepreneur, you see it everywhere. Like stuff doesn't just magically happen. And that's the thing we have to learn. A lot of us, unfortunately, the hard way.
That's
It's
right.
not necessarily us delivering value all the time. It's us at the start, but then we've got to build this entity that lives beyond us that creates the value for people. And everything doesn't just magically happen. If you got a brick and mortar gym, somebody's got to replace the toilet paper. Like
That's
all that
right.
stuff you take for granted, right? Stuff is just done. It's just operating. When you're an entrepreneur, you're building it from scratch. And so building those systems, who's sending emails, what the response is, setting up your project management tool. It's the not glamorous side of entrepreneurship that we don't sell. But if you want to stay alive
That's
and you
right.
want to survive and thrive, you got to learn how to do it. So a great recommendation on the
Yeah.
email visited.
Yeah. You know what? One thing somebody told me is it's not the best whatever that gets the most jobs. It's the one who can market themselves best and have the solid procedures and walk through client acquisition, right? It's not the best speaker, it's not the best consultant, it's not the best IT person. You may be smart, you may have the most experience, but it's about how you can sell yourself and get other people to buy into, trust you. They always talk that to get a sale, people have to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, hey, I got a bottle of water here. Would you like to buy a bottle of water? It's, hey, I see that you're thirsty. I see that you're really, kind of dehydrated. I see that you're kind of almost going into, you know, say dehydration, into a heat exhaustion. I got a bottle of water that can help you with that. Would you like to
Yeah.
so it's just that simple piece of talking problems and pains and convincing them that this is what they need.
My book recommendation is Start Finishing by Charlie Gilkey, who's also an Army veteran and a veteran entrepreneur. How to go from idea to done. He's the founder of Productive Flourishing. And I'm actually going to get him on the Transition podcast. I was talking to him on LinkedIn. But I read this book back in 2020. And it's all this idea of like, how are we making time for our most important work? So, yes, we run our businesses. Yes, we have our family obligations, but deep down, we all have these projects that like are our legacy things that we want to do, whether it's write a book, launch a podcast, something, etc. And I read this book in 2020. I jumped up out of my bed in the middle of the night and launched Confessions of a Native Son, which was my first podcast. Because at the time I had been dragging foot, I was in motion, but not taking action. I was reading books and yada, yada, yada. And I read this book and I was like, I'm going to launch this podcast. Boom, got up, launched it in the middle of the night, and I have been podcasting ever since. And I want to revisit it after finishing my first book, Black Veteran Entrepreneur, because I want to write more books, but I find myself in this hustle and bustle of seems like never-ending busyness, and busyness kills productivity and keeps us the further away from our most productive work. So just really trying to get a grasp of how can I make more time for myself to finish projects, because I got a lot of unfinished projects out there, including mailing out some of these books. And so had to go back to the knowledge well, and pull out Charlie's book. So I read the first time, and I'm listening on Audible, so I highly recommend that. So before we close up here, Don, briefly, how can people support? Where can they find you?
So www.militarytransitionroundtable.com. We have a website that talks about the program. We have an opportunity to donate there in one of the pages on fundraising. You can go to LinkedIn, and we have a Military Transition Roundtable open page. We now have 2,500 followers, so you can join us there. And we've been posting some different things on fundraising. It is Giving Tuesday, as you were talking earlier. We would love to, if you see that this program that we're talking about would resonate with people that you work with, we would love recommendations for them to become members. But if you have other referrals, or you yourself would love to donate to us to help us, it costs us about $1,500 to put a member through the program for 6 months. And when we're running 6 cohorts with 59 people in it right now, you can multiply that out and see it's a very significant cost. We have 84 alumni, and they continue to support us and give us recommendations and referrals. But we're always looking to continue to grow that, because there's 200,000 military that get out of the service every year, and we're truly international. We have people in our cohorts from Japan all the way to Germany, and across the United States. So that's 2 ways to be able to get a hold of us. We even have a Military Transition Roundtable page on Facebook. And we're in the midst today doing a Facebook fundraising campaign there. And I've been posting on that, as well as using our Flip Cause company on LinkedIn to be able to donate. So there's several different ways.
Well, Don, we appreciate having you here. We've got a link to Military Transition Roundtable in the show notes. In the chat. So feel free to check it out. For everyone that's tuning in, do me a favor and make sure you subscribe also to the Transition podcast. Last week, I dropped a solo episode talking about, I want y'all to head into 2023 with the wind at your back. You need to start annual planning today. If you haven't done so already, don't wait till the start of the new year. And I'll walk you through that process on the podcast. So be sure to check it out and let me know what you think of it by dropping me a line on LinkedIn. Be sure to also subscribe to the Transition newsletter. I need to send out a newsletter sooner rather than later, but I make sure you subscribe to that as well. I'd like to acknowledge our sponsors for today, the MetLife Foundation, for sponsoring the podcast, as well as this platform. And make sure you head to bunkerlabs.org to get plugged into the ecosystem. We got programs that will take you from idea to invoice, incubate you, and position you alongside other founders and CEOs. Until next time, everyone, peace, love, and have a great